Don't seem to have a hell of a lot to say, you know, for somebody who was supposed to be very upset and in shock.
The driver walked off. It's nothing to do with the driver.
And I held her hand because I wanted to believe her.
I asked the question, so Tracie Andrews left the pub at about 10:30, and she said no.
About what time did you leave the pub?
Well, we left about 10 to 10, something like that, I'd say.
Yes.
I didn't really look at my watch. I don't really know what time I left.
That's 10 to 10, not 10 to 11.
No, about 10 to 10.
The account she gave to us did not correspond at all with what we'd been given and led to believe by the police.
There was an impact, yeah, and there was a little sort of moment. And I think I did sort of step in after a while and sort of say...
We're perhaps getting into a bit too much detail that we don't actually want to go into quite at the moment.
Either the police had misled us, or the police had been misled.
I fell to the floor. I can't remember if I was knocked out for a bit or what, I don't know.
How can you sit and hold the hand of the mother of the guy that you've just murdered?
I wanted to believe that Lee had died by somebody else had killed him, not by the hands of his lover.
She deserved an Oscar for her performance on that appeal.
Everybody always says, oh, yeah, well, you know, the police must have known this, must have known the other. No, I mean, there was no immediate thing saying this has got to have been done by Tracie at all. I got what I hoped to get. I got it slightly a different way round to what I thought may first come round, but I got the sighting of Lee and Tracie's vehicle that there was to get.
Tracie went upstairs to have a sleep because she hadn't slept for days and days and days, and I said, let her go and have a sleep.
I went mid-morning. Her family were a little bit concerned that she'd been over to her flat on her own, which was only a short walk from the family home, and she then got a little bit groggy and didn't want anything to do with them, had shut herself away in one of the rooms, you know.
We picked her bag up. In her bag, it was just a note to her daughter saying, I'm so sorry. I can't be here no more. I want to be with Lee. So suddenly I said, oh my God.
Are you all right in there?
I said, get an ambulance, you know, get an ambulance here now, ring them up, tell them, you know, it's an overdose.
Suspected overdose. Tracie, come on, darling, speak to me.
They reckon she died twice in the ambulance. She really meant to do what she did.
So she was already in hospital starting to recover from her overdose during the Wednesday when we obtained the evidence that changed the story. Well, Tracie's version was that Tracie and Lee are travelling from that direction down there. As they turn into this junction to travel to Cooper's Hill up this way, both cars are together. The alleged Black Sierra is right behind them and the chase is still on. Simon Baker and Elaine Carruthers are travelling down this way. They see the lights of a vehicle travelling from this direction. One vehicle only. That car passes before their lights down here, and Simon Baker is able to tell that that's a Ford Escort of the XR3i type. It seems to follow that at that time they're having such a disagreement between each other that actually Lee's overshot the junction. As he stops at the line to clear his road this way, Simon Baker notices that this white vehicle has actually stopped on this near side of the road, and as he starts to pull away, look in his mirror, he sees the vehicle starting to reverse back towards this junction. And obviously from then on, Lee took this road, which is his direct road home through Cooper's Hill. No Black Sierra vehicle, then the story that Tracie was given could not be true in what she was saying. The only car that they saw was Lee and Tracie's Ford Escort.
And that was absolutely crucial evidence. It destroyed the whole road rage, pursuing vehicle, screaming down country lanes, being overtaken on the brow of Cooper's Hill. That was devastating evidence.
When it turned on that, it turned the investigation towards looking at Tracie, and therefore I made the decision that she would be arrested on the Saturday morning.
Tracie Andrews, I'm arresting you in connection with the murder of Lee Harvey. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you mention...
I just broke down and cried. I wanted the story to be the road rage. I didn't want it to be that she killed him.
I was glad that, you know, she'd been arrested, but at the same time, he still can't come to terms with it.
Well, I was just... can you be? I was numb. I couldn't believe it.
My client was arrested 3 minutes ago, and she is now being taken to Redditch Police Station. She has been arrested on suspicion of the murder.
A few days later, I think she was given the medical all clear, and we went and took her from the hospital back to the police station, where she was interviewed at length. And this time she was, you know, asked about the discrepancies, and the witness evidence was put to her.
They were asking questions and all this lot, and she said, OK, right, I want to tell you something now.
And it was at that point I really did think she was going to confess. She went very quiet, and there was a sort of pregnant pause in the interview, and I thought, yeah, she's going. And she asked to speak to a solicitor. We came out of the interview and I thought, she's going to tell us now what really happened. And they had something like a 45-minute consultation. When we went back in, she pretty much said, I've got nothing further to say, I've got nothing else to tell you.
She has been interviewed at length by the police, and she has vehemently denied any involvement in the murder of her fiancé. And she stands by that total and absolute denial.
Tracie chose an unusually flamboyant solicitor who decided to lift reporting restrictions at the first magistrates' court appearance. That meant that every detail of that court case could then be repeated.
It was what you would call a proactive defence, and they went out with their own press conferences. They went out to publish information and to seek their own witnesses independent of ourselves.
Free on bail and fighting to clear her name, Tracie Andrews today continued to protest she's innocent of murder.
The extraordinary moment here was that the police were there at a defence press conference.
Detectives leading the murder inquiry turned up unexpectedly and without invitation.
I wouldn't say so much as guests as probably uninvited guests. Yeah, we made the decision to go to this.
In 30 years, I suppose now, in journalism, I've never been to a defence press conference.
Today, her lawyer took the extraordinary step of issuing a photo-fit picture of the man she claims was the real killer.
Whoever committed that vile, wicked act is still at large.
She did an e-fit that looked remarkably like I'd looked on the night that I first met her.
So we had this situation where the defence had published the e-fit, but we were receiving nominations as to who that possibly was.
In fact, people were saying to me, you know, it's you. You know, the e-fit's you. My mother-in-law rang my wife and said, there's a photograph of our Brian in the paper, very fat-faced, short hair, and it was very much like me.
Tracie Andrews is alleged to have stabbed her boyfriend more than 30 times. Today at Birmingham Crown Court, she denied murdering him.
I think that she actually intended to kill him.
I was by no means sure before the trial started that she would be found guilty.
She thought she could pull it off. She's so naive that she thought she could pull it off.
I think that she thought she was somebody special, and she was nothing but a calculating murderer.
You think you can just dump me then, do you, Lee Harvey? Hey? Turn your back on me?
Tracie Andrews ran the gauntlet of press and television cameras today when she arrived at Birmingham Crown Court for the 10th day of her trial for the murder of her fiancé, Lee Harvey.
I think we all remember looking from the windows at Birmingham Crown Court and seeing the sort of like the entourage arrive, you know, and immediately everybody ran down the steps, out came the cameras, and I thought, how many shots of this girl do you want?
It was horrible. One of the worst times of my life, because you sit there and you listen to the evidence.
Prosecution case was geared to taking each element of what on the evidence we believed to be a deceit and seeking to expose it for what it was.
Police today set out the evidence to support their account of what they believe took place on the night of Lee Harvey's murder.
I'm sure they were arguing. I'm sure there was one dickens of a row going on in that car at some stage.
I knew it! Tonight! Oh, do you fancy a drink? I thought you were going to make it all right. But it's not, is it? Oh, go on. Say it. You can't, can you? Because you're gutless.
Shut up, Tracy. Don't say it anymore. It's over.
It will never, ever be over. Tell me you don't love me.
Don't say any more of this.
Tell me you don't love me!
She was ready for something physically taking place between them. Tracy and Lee are coming down this way, over the top of Cooper's Hill. We believe that actually Tracy tried to leave the vehicle right outside Cooper's cottage. It obviously moved quickly from being just perhaps a verbal dispute to some sort of physical assault between them.
Tracy, get back in the car. I'll sod you then.
You think you can just dump me then, do you, Lee Harvey? Hey? Turn your back on me!
Lee Harvey had sustained many, many injuries, something in the region of 30 odd, maybe 40. And a large number of those had been to the neck. She could not explain the injuries that had been sustained to his back. And the reality of that was that Lee Harvey had been stabbed whilst he was retreating. She was drenched in Lee Harvey's blood, particularly on her left side, particularly in her hair, particularly on her upper garments. She had been within range of that fountain spraying of arterial blood. Her account did not allow for that. She maintained she'd only gone over to Lee Harvey at a time after he was already lying on the floor.
20 feet in front of the vehicle in what used to be a ditch up there is a black woolen hat, which we obviously assume must come from the assailant vehicle.
She admitted that the hat had been in her pocket in the car on the fateful night. The only inference available to a jury was that she had deliberately taken that hat from her pocket, put it there in that place to support her account of the second car.
At about 10:50 thereabouts on the Sunday night, the witness Richard Main was leaving the house behind us, Keeper's Cottage, to go to his car. The automatic lights came on, and that's when he heard Tracy calling for help.
There is a time lapse between the time when undoubtedly Lee Harvey was either dead or dying and Mr. Main came face to face with the defendant. There was a minimum of about 7 minutes after Lee Harvey had sustained his fatal injuries, during which there was no attempt by the defendant to summon any help from the house.
We made a very extensive search of this area for the weapon. We couldn't assume that it had gone with the alleged assailant. We had to be sure that we made our best effort to find it.
The strongest point for the defence was the absence of a murder weapon. The reality, as the evidence eventually showed, was that she had secreted it about herself. She must have slipped it inside one of her boots. It must have been in there when she was taken to hospital. It must have been in there while she was in the hospital. And then the evidence was she kept slipping away for long periods of time to one of the lavatories nearby within the hospital.
Can I go to the loo now?
Of course, I'll take you.
She had put the knife closed within the snakeskin boot at the scene. And then spirited it away through the hospital lavatory system. Within her boot was found, in blood, a stain which was the replica in its shape, dimension and size of a Swiss Army knife.
A packed courtroom gathered this morning as Tracie Andrews took the witness stand to give her account of what happened on the night of her fiancé Lee Harvey's murder.
Tracy's QC began to take her through her story.
I've just looked at enough of how cold and how could she stand there and lie? And not, the lies were just coming out so easily.
David Krigman, prosecuting QC, stood up to cross-examine. And slowly but surely, piece by piece, molecule by molecule, he dissected her story. He took it apart.